Well, we got some new information on the president's comments that got so much media attention. Somebody in the reporter scrum today got this and is sharing this ever. The president saying, come on, I was being sarcastic.
I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you just to see what would happen. Now, disinfectant for doing this, maybe on the hands, would work. And I was asking the question of the gentleman who was there yesterday, Bill, because when they say that something will last 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours, but if the sun is out or if they use disinfectant, it goes away in less than a minute. Did you hear about this yesterday? But I was asking a sarcastic and a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room.
Trump saying he was sarcastic. There we go. We got our answer now. Producer Mark, you are somebody who is familiar with sarcasm. Do you think that that is a sufficient answer for the president's injection of whatever it was, side commentary?
I mean, it is an expert way of getting out of it.
There we go.
I will say that.
There we go. I mean, I don't think he really thought anybody was going to inject themselves with isopropyl alcohol or whatever. But anyway, that's where people, they found that they got an opportunity to trash the Trumpster. And that's the single most important thing to our press. A couple of other stories I wanted to run by Mr. Producer Mark here. Well, first off, there was as I asked Clay Travis, sports radio host yesterday, I was like, is there a draft going on? Apparently there was a draft. How did it go, Producer Mark?
You're referring to the NFL draft. I know most of our listeners probably know that, but I have to inform Buck these things sometimes. Mm-hmm. It went well. Number 1 overall pick was as expected. Joe Burrow, the quarterback out of LSU, goes to Cincinnati, which stinks for him. No offense to Cincinnati, but it's a small market in terms of the NFL realm of the 32 teams. And, yeah, I think the draft went well. It was an interesting draft. You know, Roger Goodell.
How was it different?
Well, it was Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, was in his basement, and everyone was kind of separate. They had feeds of, like, Skype probably of every prospect in their house, and all the anchors were in their different living rooms and stuff. And it was like a mobile NFL draft, which has never been done before. They were supposed to be in Las Vegas on boats at the Bellagio, welcoming Oakland to Las Vegas. The Oakland Raiders are, well, not Oakland anymore. The Raiders are now the Las Vegas Raiders, so it was supposed to be a big welcome in Vegas, and instead everyone was at home.
Fair enough. And the league, the way this works is that it goes like many rounds, right? There's many rounds.
7
they draft
rounds.
Not 7 rounds, okay. And then because they don't fill out the whole team roster, then there's also the training camp stuff, and they can add or drop people, right?
Well, the free agency already happened, so
Okay.
teams filled out their rosters with the big free agent signings. Then the draft happens. Every team originally gets 7 picks, but then there's trades and supplemental picks for losing free agents and stuff like that.
See, my thing is that with the debates, I actually believe the presidential debates will be better without an audience. I think that an audience is annoying and they make noise, and I don't need to hear them cheer for the other. That's just bull.
Yeah, it's just annoying too. I just want to hear what they're saying. I don't
exactly. I want to hear what the candidates are saying. I don't want to hear an audience. And I also think that the moderators can sometimes. Cause look, I've been in front of a live audience with Bill Maher. You better go in there and be ready to get booed. And people think they're ready to get booed by like 200 people on TV until they are, and then they can get really rattled by that. I mean, I don't give a what. But for sports, such a big. I mean, I have been to a lot of live sports, professional sports events in my life, and the audience is like especially it's just an integral part of it. I don't know. It feels like in Europe, I know sometimes if there's bad behavior by the fans, like soccer hooligans of a team, they will clear out the stadium and only play for the fans to watch at home, but they won't allow the local fans to go to the game. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. That's why you sometimes have these 80,000 person soccer stadiums, with 2 world-class teams, and it's empty. Do you think we're going to have that with football?
It's possible. I mean, if football starts September, October? Do you really think they're going to have 80,000 people, 100,000 people in a building together to watch football?
I don't know.
I doubt it.
It just feels to me, I still don't really understand the mechanics of why being in a stadium, like if you're in a stadium with 100,000 people, you're really only going to come into close physical contact with probably, I guess it's that there's a lot of people that could come into physical contact with 30 or 40 other people.
You must only sit in like the good seats when you go to a sporting event.
I've been
Try
to a
to
few
sit
of
in
those.
the upper deck.
I've been to a few of those corporate boxes.
Yeah, in the corporate boxes, you could social distance. Try to do that in
Yeah.
the upper deck or in the upper concourses where you're smushed into a million people and you're basically into a cardboard box to sit, and you're trying to get food and you're online and it's impossible.
Yeah, but that's where the real fans are.
It is where the real fans
where the
are, and
real
all the
fans
real
are.
fans are going to get COVID-19.
Yeah, that's not. It's not good. So yeah, I just wonder what's going to happen with the professional sports leagues, and then one other thing. You have a missus. I do not, but there was a Japanese politician. I forget what his role was. Not the president. It wasn't Shinzo Abe, but it was another like senior guy in Japan, in the Japanese government, who made some comment about, and I think it was in the realm of public policy, but he was basically saying, look, let the guys go to the grocery store because they shop so much faster.
True. That is true.
This created mayhem. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, how could you? You already said it's true, huh?
True,
So
Bob.
Mrs. Mark is not gonna deny you meatloaf this weekend because you're saying this is true?
I've said this to my wife's face. If I go to the grocery store by myself a minute out in 10, 15 minutes, if she comes with me, she likes to walk up and down every aisle, and then we end up spending $400.
Oh man, the range is hot with producer Mark. I thought you were gonna have to like dance around this one a little bit, but
No, and she's behind me too, so she's giving me a death glare. I'll go with it.
yeah. I'm just saying, man. There's, when I go to the grocery store, which I obviously have to do all the time now, there's no one else to go, and I've also never been married, so I've never had a woman. But I've been with girlfriends before. We've gone shopping in the grocery store, and it is always I'm speaking from the I perspective, or the me perspective. I have never. My patience has never not been tested by how much longer my female companion takes at the grocery store. I will say that.
I think
you go
we're just
in,
wired to.
You
do
need
it
the
quickly,
things. What do you need? You need milk, eggs, steak, chicken, maybe paper towel if you're out, and some veggies if you want to be healthy. Boom, and maybe you grab some cereal on the way out or something. That's it. How long can this take? There's a 15-minute limit that they have in one of the grocery stores near me, and I'm like, this is a good thing. There should always be a 15-minute limit. Get out of here. What do we think?
I agree with you. There should never be more than 15, 20 minutes in a grocery store unless, you're moving to a new apartment, you need extra food, stuff like that, sure. But in general, what do I need an hour in a supermarket for?
I got to say, where do you burn the most time when you go to the grocery store? What is your happy section?
Happy section? Well, I need to look at all the ice creams. That's for sure.
Your
Cookies,
ice cream, okay.
Bakery stuff, stuff like that.
I go wild, and now this is kind of similar to you, but the frozen section for me is where I end up burning the most time. Frozen food used to have this wrap of, the TV dinners that you didn't want to eat and that were gross and everything. Frozen food sections now in major grocery stores, they've got great stuff.
I agree.
There's really good stuff. There's great mac and cheese. There's chicken tenders. So I burn a lot of time in the frozen. There's baked goods that for a gluten-free person, because they don't move enough gluten-free baked product to usually have it slacked out, which means not frozen. Because all baked goods really they'll freeze when they move them, and then they'll slack it out, which means let it defrost. And what you get is actually defrosted bread. People don't, or defrosted muffins. People don't realize that. Also, any fish that you buy the first thing they do is they freeze it. They have to freeze it right away, otherwise they'd never be able to bring it to you. So people have this notion of frozen is bad. Frozen is actually often the freshest way, certainly for food to be transported, but you can get things at their peak freshness. True of blueberries and other fruits and veggies too. Better to go out of season. If you're in season, obviously, they can take it right from the farm and bring it to you and all that stuff. But if you're out of season, certain produce, better to go frozen because it is flash frozen at a peak of ripeness.
Yeah, I go frozen veggies all the time.
It's also like when you're making tomato sauce, you actually want to use, unless you get great in-season tomatoes, which that's only part of the year, better to use stewed canned tomatoes because they go right in when they're fresh.
Yeah, that's, your old Italian grandmother. Not that you have an old Italian grandmother, but
Yeah.
they'll always say they use the canned tomatoes. They have a specific brand that they like to make their gravy.
Yeah, that's true. That's the deal. So anyway, that's producer Mark. We didn't even have to wait very long. He's like, "Yep, Mrs. Mark takes." Tell Mrs. Mark we all say hi. By the way,
I will.
Mrs. Mark takes a little bit longer, but look, she wants to make sure that she brings producer Mark all the fresh and delicious food.
Yeah, she wants to make sure I spend as much money as humanly possible.
What is the ultimate? Do you guys have the same taste in ice cream? What is the go-to ice cream flavor?
In general, like just plain flavors, chocolate is the flavor.
Chocolate's the but do you have like a funky flavor, like Chunky Monkey or Rocky Road? Or
I'll go for me personally, any Ben and Jerry's, like I can't even remember. Fish food is really good. Half baked is my favorite.
I gotta tell you, I've had more ice cream in the last month.
Too much.
Any time in my life. Every night I eat and I'm like, yeah, can't go out, can't see anybody. I got some ice cream in the fridge though. It's not good for me, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
You're just gonna eat more of it. That's what I've been doing too. Ice cream, cookies, anything.
Ice cream YOLO. Oh man, I've been putting the sweets away too. It is kind of a mass experiment we're running on whether stress eating is a thing. It is. Yeah, stress eating is a thing. This is a thing that people do. It's better than drinking too much alcohol or smoking too much weed, but still, stress eating is a thing that people do.
I think those two things make you eat more food.
Oh yeah, that's also true. I definitely in college. I remember we would order food at like 1:00 in the morning because we're all so drunk and like we thought it would keep us from being hungover. Who's eating pizzas at 1:00 in the morning? College kids who are drunk. So
that's what Domino's and Pizza Hut and stuff like that exists for.
Yeah, this is when I could eat gluten too. So I used to eat those. What were the breadsticks?
Cheesy bread.
Yes, the cheesy breadsticks
great.
with like dunking it in sauce too.
You've got to figure out a gluten-free version. I'm sure Snow Princess can figure that out.
Yeah. Oh no, she's got it. She makes the best gluten-free chocolate chip cookies I've ever had in my life. They're amazing. But she left a plate of them for me, and she's like, "Give them out to people." But I was like, "Sure, honey." And then I was like, "But I don't want to give anybody, I don't know."
Yeah, they're all in your stomach, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all in my belly because I don't want to give anybody a cookie. I don't know. What if I cough on my hand? What if, you know what I mean? Like, I got to do what I got to do. So I ate the cookies myself.
Oh, yeah, you big sacrifice for buck
I
there.
ate the cookies myself. Roll call is coming up next. Roll call, everybody. That's right. So it's a roll call day, a roll call night. Heading off. Oh, bucksexton.com is the website, folks. That is where you should be going to get your daily news deep dive. That's right. And we're going to even find out, we're going to get producer Mark to do the penalty box. He'll do like short rant commentary. Mark, you know what you'd be very good at? You ever see those guys who get in the car and they just video themselves and they're just like, "Somebody explain to me why a peanut is neither a pea nor a nut." Like they just kind of lay into it. You'd be good.
I'd be good. So you're saying I'd be good at yelling.
Well,
Basically
like talking about things that don't make sense to you and that other people would agree with.
All right.
I'm just coming up with content ideas. But, we're bucksexton.com. We got news stories going up there. Also, if you're not on Twitter, which a lot of people I know are not, it's really Twitter mostly exists for journalists to argue with and try to show off for other journalists. That's kind of the main function that I think Twitter plays. But you can also follow on Instagram. Producer Mark, do you think we should start a Buck Sexton Show Twitter account that's separate from me? We should think about that. That you could run.
I think there is one that we don't have access to.
We're locked out of it. That's good times. That's good times. We might want to figure that one out. That's the craziness.
I love when you do these show meetings on air and then you find things out.
Yeah. Well, now everybody knows. The team is totally they're a part of this, man. This is the house that Team Buck built. That's what we're doing. So, all right, we'll figure that out. I was like, maybe we should have a show account. Apparently we do. I didn't even know that. But we'll make it all happen. Okay, he sent me roll call, so let's get into it. Your thoughts here, please. That's what we do. That's how we roll. And with that in mind, we have Morea. I think that's the way to pronounce this. Since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, my biggest fear has always been that our economy crashes and can't recover. I do believe that we are dealing with a horrible disease, but I never bought into the experts telling us that millions of Americans were going to die. Now, after 6 weeks of quarantining, another large fear that I have is the threat of mail-in voting. I truly believe that if Democrats pass this, it will be the end for conservative Republican candidates winning any election at any level of government. What measures can citizens take to ensure that this happens? Well, we talked a little about mail-in voting and how there's really just it's a wide open door for fraud. And people who keep saying that election fraud is minor and barely exists, well, that's also because it's very hard to prove and no one ever wants to put the resources toward figuring it out. And that does exist. And in fact, one of the major cases of election fraud in recent years was some guy who was doing ballot harvesting, I think, down in North Carolina, if memory serves, or South Carolina. Pardon me for getting my Carolinas mixed. But he was in one of those two states, and he was doing ballot harvesting, which was, in some states, it's illegal. I think in Nevada, for example, ballot harvesting is illegal. Other states allow it. So, yeah, I think that it would be a problem if they went through with this. I'm not really sure. Look, I don't think it's going to happen. The only way that this would be the format the election takes is if we're still in a really bad place with the disease and Republicans cave on this and say, okay, fine, this is how we're going to do it. Although states do have a big say. So I don't know. I wish I could tell you that I knew what the fall would look like, what November will look like from a political standpoint, from an election standpoint. But I do know that the election will happen. That is for real. The stuff you're hearing from Biden out there about how the election may be delayed, this is just crazy. And that's why I like it when Trump calls out crazy Biden. Mark, play clip 12.
I can't tell you what's going to happen. We have a sleepy guy in a basement of a house that the press is giving a free pass to, who doesn't want to do debates because of COVID. And lots of things are happening, right? And I watched a couple of interviews, and I say, oh, I look forward to this. But they're keeping him sheltered because of the coronavirus. And he's not moving around. He's not moving too much.
They are keeping him on lockdown. You know, Trump is also over 70, and yet the president still being the president. I know there are precautions around him, too. Certainly, and I don't just mean Secret Service precautions. I mean the disease precautions that are being put into place. But it will be interesting to see if Joe Biden even really has to emerge, if there is a campaign. I would wonder at this point how much it would even make a difference. It seems like the election is going to be a referendum on Trump. The media is going to have a huge voice in this. Trump, because of who he is and how he understands the media, will certainly be making his case and be using the platforms that are at his disposal to counter the narrative from the mainstream media. But they'll view this as an opportunity to reassert their power. That's going to be a huge part of this. They feel like what happened in 2016, not only ideologically and for many journalists personally offended them, but they also think that it was a repudiation of their ability to shape the national conversation around politics. And so they want to reassert themselves the next time around and let everybody know, hey, the media still gets to call the shots on this stuff. And if Trump loses, that will be the perception that they come away with. And so you're going to see the most insane effort to destroy Trump from mainstream media you've ever seen since 2016. More of the roll call. David writes in, hey, Buck, the Ted Nugent podcast was absolutely incredible. I've heard him over the years and always admired him both as a guitarist and as a critical thinker, but he needs time to get going, and you made that happen. I'm going to have to listen to it a few more times because he wastes no thoughts on what he believes, and he moves fast. Ribeye in the Sky had me laughing out loud. Keep up the great work. Yeah, he was talking about the sandhill crane there, which I'd never even heard of before. But turns out sandhill cranes, because they're a migratory bird, are covered under federal law. You know, birds that migrate are a federal issue for hunting purposes. And there had been a federal prohibition, I believe, in the past on hunting them, but maybe now that's gone. But he says you can't eat them, and who knows? It's I don't know the Michigan hunting laws very well. Josh, hey, Obi-Buck Kenobi. I believe the term you were searching for yesterday was hope shaming. Bill Maher had a decent segment about it on his show last week. He had all of his arguments regarding the administration's virus response calmly and respectfully dismantled by Representative Dan Crenshaw. He was left speechless at times without his liberal mob crowd to back him up. The crowd you bravely faced. Keep your shields high. This is the way. Well, Josh, thank you. And yeah, look, Bill, the whole structure of the Bill Maher show is that there's an audience to boo you, and he can just jump in and yell, F-bomb, or shut the F-bomb up or something, and you have to sit there, if you're the conservative, and be like, okay, here we go. I mean, there's not, unless you want to try to escalate, and then you're just the crazy person in the room, right? So it's structured so that it's not really a conversation. It's not that it's a fair conversation at all. It's structured so that it's barely even a conversation. It's a little bit like doing the Daily Show back in the day where people kept thinking, oh, I'm clever, I'm smart, I'll sit there. No, when someone else can manipulate the audio and the video as they did on the Daily Show of interviews, doesn't matter who you are, because they'll cut it out of order, because they'll say, ha, it's just a comedy show. They'll cut it up and they'll make you look dumb. It doesn't matter. They'll deliberately misrepresent what you've said, and they'll cut things out where the person's looking at you funny and where you're being all serious so you look like an idiot. When someone else controls the environment, and this is why when people call into radio shows and they argue with individuals on the radio show, the radio host can turn you down. The radio host can talk over you. The radio host has the audience on his or her side. It usually doesn't go well for the person who wants to try to call the host out on air, but unless they call in and make like a fart noise and these things that what was it? Didn't Howard Stern used to do that to people all the time, right?
Yeah, Baba Booey.
What is that? What is Baba Booey?
Really? You know nothing about the history of radio sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, it's true.
It's basically one of Howard Stern's cronies would call into random shows and yell Baba Booey. Or they would I've seen it at like golf events. All of a sudden, you know how at golf when somebody's about to shoot, everyone's quiet. All of a sudden, you hear in the background, Baba Booey. Somebody screams it, stuff like that. And then they can have fun with it on the show.
Ah, I see. When the most Howard Stern that I ever watched was way back in the day when they used to have that, they had the cameras. So they were kind of ahead of the time with this a little bit. They had the cameras and they did a show on E! Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yes, a long time ago. But I actually used to see that version of the Howard Stern show a fair amount. And it was interesting, the folks they had on. It was quite an assortment.
Yeah, they have an assortment, but you know what I will say about Howard? He's the best interviewer ever.
People always say this. I should listen to, I really enjoy, even though I think he's wrong about some things, I think he comes across like a thoughtful and decent guy. And in the current media environment, that's such a rarity these days. People either love to shout at everybody and call everybody idiots, which is just boring and pathetic, or they really just want a monologue and then like hand it to the guest for a second and then go back to their monologue. And there are very few people that really connect with other ideas in a meaningful way. So I'd have to find like what's a great example of really what Rush I grew up listening to and like that form of talk radio I know very well. I did not listen to much Howard Stern. Even though I'm a New Yorker, I really didn't. It wasn't my thing. So I'd have to find like a great example of him doing a long form interview with somebody as a real, because I've heard other people say that too. And you're a student of the game. So if you're telling me that he's a really good interviewer, but is it just because he asks questions that nobody else will ask because they have parameters of like decency that they won't cross, right? Like, is the secret weapon that he's such a good interviewer, or is it that he is an interviewer with no rules? Well, he'll be like, how good is your wife at doing blah 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 blah?
He will ask that stuff. Obviously, they're a silly show sometimes, but he just connects with the guests in a way and gets people to open up in a way that nobody else does.
I'll have to go check this out. Well, we'll see. As for Crenshaw, I saw that exchange. I thought Dan Crenshaw did a very good job. And look, a lot of people are expecting that Dan Crenshaw in about 10, 15 years is going to run for president. So if he just keeps doing what he's doing, I think that's a very real possibility. Robert, I'll tell you what makes me mad. While our country is dealing with a major national disaster, both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, scatter like rats and leave town instead of staying in Washington and getting the people's business done. Shouldn't this be the time they donned PPE and sat in Congress and hammered out deals to help the American people? What has gone wrong with your system? I'm sorry, with our system, not your system. It's like I don't control this thing, man. I don't know. Yeah, look, the members of Congress, generally speaking, are not going to be. They're not profiles in political courage. I wouldn't expect them to be profiles in personal courage either. There are exceptions to that, clearly. I was just talking about Dan Crenshaw. But, overall, a lot of them are going to be like, I don't want to be there. They're concerned very much about this disease. And so they're just going to use this. Look, they don't want to take the risk. That's what it really comes down to. And as for Pelosi and all that, well, here you have AOC, for example. Producer Mark, where was that clip? Oh, yeah, just rewriting history in real time. Here's AOC talking about how it's Republicans, even though Democrats are the ones that keep slowing down the emergency funding bills, it's Republicans who are at fault. Play clip 11.
On behalf of my constituents in the Bronx and Queens, New York's 14th congressional district, the most impacted district in America, calling people losing their families every day. It is a joke when Republicans say that they have urgency around this bill. The only folks that they have urgency around are folks like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack. Those are the people getting assistance in this bill. You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops, and we have to fight to fund hospitals, fighting to fund testing. That is what we're fighting for in this bill. It is unconscionable. If you had urgency, you would legislate like rent was due on May 1st and make sure that we include rent and mortgage relief for our constituents.
I mean, this is delusional. Democrats wouldn't give money for additional small businesses to get money. They held it up. If you're going to talk about a lack of urgency, the lack of urgency comes from the Democrats. Republicans are trying to pass more bills about other things, too. Why hold up a bill that everyone agrees on the purpose of it? Everyone has already agreed on a bipartisan fashion for the goals of the bill, so then why make it go more slowly? Why be difficult in that process? I mean, there's no good answer to that other than Democrats wanted something out of it. They wanted to try to use leverage. So AOC's complaints here about how there's no urgency from the right, this is just rewriting of history. Again, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the Democrats are the ones who keep dragging their feet on these very important bills. We know it. We see it. It's clear. So let's not allow them to pull this nonsense where they're telling us that there's something else going on here than what really is going on. Back to roll call. Sorry about that. Sonia, let's be frank. When they say if it saves one life, it will be worth it, what they really mean is if it saves my life, all your pain and suffering is worth it. No, Sonia, I mean, I actually think that for a lot of the lockdown extreme consensus folks that refuse to even entertain the notion that more moderate mitigation could have gotten us to basically the same place with far less economic damage, which is the argument. The argument is not just go out and hug and kiss and cough on everybody and there's no problem. I mean, that's never been the argument. That's absurd. But, yeah, the people that are pushing the lockdown for everyone, it's easy for them to say that generally. They're not suffering from the lockdown. And they also recognize that the lockdown has major political implications. A destroyed economy means that President Trump can't run on the economy. It doesn't matter that it's not his fault. They know this, right? The president's not going to be able to go in the fall and say, hey, guys, look at how great I was at running the economy. Once we get past this virus, we'll be right back there. That's going to be a tough sell. So there's a clear political incentive for people on the left to root for the greatest economic damage possible while also feeling that they have this built-in virtue of we're the good guys because we want every life. Every life will be protected. But that's not true. We've lost 50,000 people already. People are going to die from this. They're going to continue to die from this. It's a terrible situation. Jenny, I work in aerospace. And our company is going to lay off 30% of the workforce next week. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Jenny. That stinks. Really tired of the president being hammered daily in his press briefings. I think next time a reporter asks him about a state opening up, right away he needs to make an example of that reporter. He actually did that pretty well. Bruce and Mark, play 13, please.
Luckily, sir, you're the president, and people tuning into these briefings, they want to get information and guidance and want to know what to do. They're not looking for rumors.
Phil, I'm the president, and you're fake news. And you know what I'll say to you? I'll say very nicely, I know you well. I know you well, because I know the guy. I see what he writes. He's a total faker. So are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? It's just a suggestion from a brilliant lab by a very, very smart, perhaps brilliant man. He's talking about sun, he's talking about heat, and you see the numbers. So that's it. That's all I have. I'm just here to present talent. I'm here to present ideas, because we want ideas to get rid of this thing. And if heat is good, and if sunlight is good, that's a great thing as far as I'm concerned.
It is a great thing. It means that the summer months we're heading into will be useful for the suppression of this virus just based on environmental factors. But you asked for him to make an example. There he is. He says, I'm the president and you're fake news. That'd be kind of funny to keep as a drop. I mean, that's a great one. I'm the president and you're fake news. Next up here on roll call, Thomas, Buck, I side with Mitch McConnell. The latest iteration of bailout money must be the last of it. Let states that fail to maintain fiscal budgets file for bankruptcy. They are the ones who created this economic disaster, Shields high. Well, Thomas, as I was discussing, I think there is a difference between the bills that are now gathering together for states that are direct result of COVID-19 versus what they, nothing that was owed by a state, no debts that a state had accrued before February of 2020 should even be under consideration for federal money, as far as I'm concerned. But if you look at what's happened for some states that have been hit, for some states that are hit really badly by this, that's going to be a tougher call, because we get into, okay, well, does Florida get, when Florida gets hit, for example, by a natural disaster, is there federal relief funding? When Louisiana gets hit by Katrina, is there federal funding, right? That we see that there are times when states do get disaster funding, and I don't think that we should deny that to places for this. But what we shouldn't allow to happen, I think this is your point too, although maybe you take it a little bit further than this, is we shouldn't allow states to be able to get out of their previous ridiculous spending, overspending, because now the federal government has the pocketbook open. So I would agree on that if that's where you are. And as I was saying, make sure you go to bucksexton.com. Please bookmark it, check in. You can listen to the podcast there. We're going to come up with, if you come up with great ideas for producer Mark content, we'll put some of that up there. So he loves that idea. We'll have, producer Mark's list of the top 10 best sandwiches, top 10 best Netflix picks. We'll come up with something. So
I could do sports stuff, but unfortunately there are none.
Yeah, that's right. We actually could have you do producer. The penalty box could be about sports.
Perfect.
But we don't.
When sports comes back, we'll get
right
on
I was going
that.
to say, can you please bring sports back, though?
I can't personally.
Can you call some of your people?
I think it's more your people that can help here.
Yeah, that's. I'll speak to the White House folks.
Yeah,
We'll see what we
the
can
big
do.
guy in the White House, he might be able to help.
There we go. Adam, Buck, on the train horn issue, you likely were hearing a grand crossing. It's 2 long blasts, 1 short and 1 long as the train hits the crossing. As the train cannot stop for more than a mile, it's a needed warning. Some towns will make deals with a train company to silence the trains during the night hours. Shields high. Well, yeah, man, that would have been nice for me in college when in the middle of the night it was like, poop, poop, And I was like, no, I don't need to hear this. It was loud. This train was loud. But trains are still very important for transporting freight. But I have a feeling that he didn't tell us this, but Adam sounds like he's probably a train engineer. So this is what I love. With this audience, I'm just like, excuse me, could someone explain to me how we could do the following? Like, I need an expert in putting those ships inside of bottles, and we would get a bunch of people right in who are like, well, I'm actually, Buck, not to be immodest, but I'm the number 2 ranked international ship in bottle expert, and Do you remember
we have
that?
experts on everything.
We have experts on everything. This audience is amazing. Like I could crowdsource anything to these guys and gals, and I'd get an amazing answer. Steven, I watched Governor Cuomo live. I was amazed at the arrogance of his point. Those who need to work need to get an essential job, despicable. The majority of America needs to get back to work. I'm glad to see Governor Kemp in Georgia leading the charge in a state that has been absolutely rocked by skyrocketing unemployment numbers, only behind New York and California. Yeah. Look, man, I hear you. I think that Cuomo really misstepped there. David writes, I'm really curious why everyone prefaces any comment about crazy Uncle Joe with, I'm sure he's a really nice or good guy. Look at his history. He's not a nice or good guy. He's always been a political hitman for his party. He's nasty, mean, spiteful, hateful, and always was. Now he's just pathetic, senile old man who's being used by his party and his family to get power, in which case he'll be cast aside by the people pulling his strings to make him seem rational. David, not holding back on the fire. Eric, on Rachel Maddow celebrating the hydroxychloroquine study, seriously, how sick does one have to be to take joy in something not working that held such hope? Makes me wonder if they want a solution. Eric, you know where I stand on this one, man. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Please tell people about the show over the weekend. Go to bucksexton.com. Make sure you download the Buck Sexton Show podcast. Tell people to do the same. We're all going to rest up this weekend because next week it's going to be another challenge. We'll be in it together, though. Shields high.